Hey, welcome to EmpowerAg Trading Turnaround Tuesday, live with EmpowerAg Trading. Thanks for joining us here Tuesday. We're back again to talk about your grain markets. Yeah, things to watch for the week ahead. What's happening today? What's happening right now? And I think it's all about the August WASDE tomorrow. That's at the forefront right now. Have some July CPI data tomorrow. What's going on with inflation? Is it softening? Impacts to Fed rate decisions going forward? And we're always talking about weather too this time of year. August is bean month. Still feeling corn kernels out there. A lot of production still in the forefront right now. And crop tour season is beginning as well. We'll get more. We've had some crop tours, and we'll get some more going forward. We got a big one next week. So let's roll that intro, and then we'll close up the markets and talk about your markets. Thanks. All right, thanks for joining us here today. Invite you to like, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment and let us know what's on your mind, what you're thinking about. I had some comments last week and I didn't click over and look at them. And after we wrapped up the show, I was like, oh my goodness, there's some comments over there. But we'll try to get them in the show. Drop them in there. Let us know what's on your minds, what you think yield is going to be tomorrow, what you think the big shocker is going to be. We'll see what happens here. Let's quote up the markets and then we'll dive into the show. Looking at Dees corn, we're down a penny and a half at 460.5. Over at Nove beans, down 11 3/4 cents, 11.68 on the board on your Nove beans. KC wheat market, we're down 14.5 at 6.99. Lost that 7 handle on your KC wheat market. Chicago wheat's down 11 1/4 at 6.29.5. Over in your cattle markets, firmer in the back months. August is unchanged, but your September's up almost 80 points. In looking at October, cattle up $1.20. Live cattle on the October front, unchanged and a little firmer in your back month, up 45 points. You look at the macro market, we got the Dow up 74 points. The S&P, the Dow is down 74 points. The S&P is down 22 points, and the NASDAQ is down 125 points. So a lot of red on your screen in the grains. Cattle trying to hang in there. Pre-report positioning. I'm going to bring Connor B in, and we're going to just dive into this. So thanks for joining us. And Connor, what's happening in Illinois?
Yeah, we're hot. Probably not as hot as you guys are in Kansas, but we're surviving out here.
It's been a scorcher. It's that time of year. I mean, 105, 106 degrees is the peak. 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock type heats. But 10 o'clock, it's like 90 some degrees at 10 o'clock at night. It doesn't cool off at night. I think we haven't even barely broke into the upper 70s in the evenings, which isn't good for plants to, breathe and get a break from this heat, or animals to breathe and get a break from this heat. So nobody wants to talk about the nasty weather, but it's here and it's real and it's a factor out west. And yeah, I can only imagine, though. I mean, luckily, it's a dry heat, Connor. That's what they always say. It's a dry heat out here. But what would it be with the humidity levels that you guys deal with? I'm sure you go east into Missouri, Iowa, and your part of the world, and when you get 100-degree temps with the humidities you have, it's even worse.
Yeah, well, we're not near as hot as that, but it is whatever the opposite of a dry heat is. That's what we have. It's very humid. The dehumidifiers are running constantly.
A balmy heat, yes.
Yeah. Cool. I know. I figured the show, any direction you want to go, I figure we're going to talk a lot about the report. But can I just point out one thing I didn't see was going to happen is I was writing our morning wire this morning, and I kind of talked about how we're going to be range bound. This market's not going to break through a whole lot of support and resistance. It's going to be just positioning ahead of this report. The corn market has done exactly that. The past three, if we hold today's level where we're down a penny, that'll be the largest move we've seen since about Wednesday. This market it's moved during the day, but we've closed almost unchanged, 1/4 cent up, 1/4 cent down. Soybeans, we're breaking through that support level, which I didn't necessarily see coming. I had it at call it 1170 and sitting at 1168. Kind of a bigger drop than I thought we'd see ahead of that report.
Yes, yeah, soybeans and wheat. As sitting there quoting up the markets, thinking, yeah, I mean, wheat's on the lower end of the range, corn's on the lower end of the range, yeah, but it feels like meal. And what's crude doing? I didn't even quote up crude.
Crude's up about right at $1.
Okay,
so
anytime you look at these markets and watch them move and seeing where it's at, what's happening with crude, what's happening with their energy markets, it's kind of a go-to look. But with it being up $1, I don't know. Is it just report positioning ahead of tomorrow? Just more sellers than buyers as we get it and prepare for what could happen, what the USDA could print in tomorrow's reports?
I think it's positioning. Whenever we're talking moving averages or anything like that, we're always going to see some algos kick in. But I'm still chalking it up to positioning.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, big report tomorrow. Yield, the big question mark on one of them, acreage, the other question mark, right? Yeah, who knows what the USDA is going to print and how the market's going to react.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yield, we can jump on Twitter, we can debate yield. It's been a constant for the past couple of weeks, right? We've seen with the yield models, and we can get into that. I think the acreage is what scares almost everyone, right? And history says they don't adjust acreage a whole lot if you look back the past 20 years. They definitely can, because last year what they do is they hit us with a bigger yield. Everyone expected a big yield. They hit us with a massive yield. Oh, and guess what? Also, let's go ahead and add 3 million corn acres or 2.5 or whatever it was. And so that's on the back of everyone's mind. And I think that's what makes me, last year we were outside the range of estimates, just barely, but the USDA came in higher than the highest estimates. And we had a pretty big range last year to where when I see a 180.5 on the
hitting that 183 number is, I'd be south of that in my opinion. I think that, but I got backyarditis too. It's just, it's hot here. It's heat. We're losing bushels every day. I think the fringe really helped lift the trend last year, and I'm looking for not a trend type of yield year, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I got too much backyarditis, Connor.
How could you not? If you're in Western Kansas, if you're in the North Dakota, right? How could you not get backyarditis when you see those good to excellent conditions in the 30s, in the 40s? I gotta imagine if an Eastern Iowa guy walks out of his back door and is taking an honest look at what he has in the field, he's probably thinking we can make close to trend line, right? It's very much turning into the haves and have-nots. I think it's also important to talk about how the USDA does their methodology for this report. They're going to look at FSA data. They're going to look at satellite imagery, but then a lot of it is going to still be survey-based response, right? Take it or leave it. We know what those survey results are. The response rate it's like 15-20%. It's abysmal. But that's how they're going to base, moving forward, that's how they're going to base the numbers. So it's absolutely, if last year they printed was it 188? It was north of 188, and final yield came down to 186. 2 years ago, we were closer to a trend line. I think we started at north of 180, 181, 182. I can't remember. And we came in at 177 on the January report. So no matter what it says, the story isn't over. We're going to do this again in September, December, and January. But important to keep in mind.
Yep. The debate will continue on yield, on acreage forever we're still debating last year's crop size and when the USDA will true up last year's numbers too out there. So we'll see what gets printed. Market mover though, nonetheless. And want to highlight, I think I got a graphic in here. Don't want to be too graphic heavy, but just looking at the D's corn seasonal average, this graphic from Commodity View on bar chart. But if you look at just the seasonal average, 5-year and 20-year there for the rest of the season, averages are averages. They they average out the outlier type of years. So it kind of dials things in. But you would think, looking at this graphic, that the market would just be choppy going into harvest. And, but it does highlight, early spring, the opportunities there. And then the recent rally that we saw into July, that was a nice opportunity. What I'd point out here, though, Connor, I took this March corn contract, the change versus the 1st of August, and just highlights each individual year, some of the big changes there. Hopefully you can see that. But on 22, I believe we rallied around $1.60 from the 1st of August into the 1st of March. And then in 24, we had the polar opposite, where we sold off about $1 over that course of time. So don't rule out the potential for this market to move in a sizable way going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. It really puts in perspective. And I think, the other thing is, let's say we see a negative report, right? We see this market go lower in into August, maybe into September. I think when we start looking at maybe long-term trends in the corn market, there's a lot of reasons that we could be friendly corn post-harvest. And so I think if you're a good marketer, you got to make sure we're looking at things, maybe just not down in the dumps. Oh, the price is terrible. What's our opportunity, right? If we see a lower market, how can we re-own this crop into March? How can we re-own some soybeans if it drops, things like that? Because, right now the narrative is what? It's weather. It's where we're going to come on U.S. acres. Brady, what's the narrative going to be in about 3 months? It's going to be two months. It's going to be Brazil planning, right? What are they looking at? How's their planning progress? How's that long-term weather forecast? And so, it's always important. Try and keep things in perspective no matter where we go. I hope we have a bullish report. I can't always be talking about the negatives, right? Everyone's going to call me a perma bear.
I love it, Connor. All right. Speaking of fall, things changing. After we get past this report, it's back to weather. It's back to trading war headlines, geopolitics, super El Nino, Godzilla El Nino, whatever you want to call it. We got weather ahead of us and lots of headlines out there. I think we had the hottest July for the contiguous United States on record, going back to, I don't know how long, but that's a headline that's generated some talking points. And then you talk about that super El Nino, the implications it could have across outside of the U.S., Brazil, South America production, Australia production. It's a moving target. It's a moving market. And I think the thing we can count on going forward, like you said, Connor, is things are going to change going forward. Things are going to change. So it's a quiet market, though. And I go back to that there's old adage that they talk about is don't sell a quiet market, Connor. When things are quiet.
Sure. And we had export inspections out yesterday. We continue to see flash sales to China on soybeans. We continue to have fantastic demand in the corn market. And so, could we have a trendline yield crop? We're going to know tomorrow, right? But even if we do, with where demand is, and you start throwing in, if, I'm going to say if, my heart wants to say when, but I'm going to say if China buys some U.S. corn, right? We get that demand structure building, right? That's another bullish card that we can play. Other fact I have for you mentioned humidity and just the hottest July on record. I saw this week, it wasn't my area, but St. Louis, Missouri, Southern Illinois, humidity levels were the same as in the Amazon rainforest.
Well, that's a fact. That's a fact for you for sure. Yes. Yeah. Well, we'd take a little bit of humidity to pop up and see if it'd pop up some thunderstorms out here. I think we got some decent chances for some moisture that would be very welcome out here in western Kansas later in the week. Anything though for a break from these 105-degree days. You hide out inside, find the AC, get your work done early, and then go hide out in the air conditioning. That's my mindset, I guess, right now. But yeah.
Sure. Absolutely.
Cool. Well, we'll see what tomorrow brings, Connor B. And it's likely to shake things up, and maybe we'll get some movement out of this market. Hopefully it's to the direction that we want to see versus continued downward price pressure. We'll see what we get tomorrow, Connor B.
Right. Absolutely. We'll be looking at the numbers. Always look at that corn per, if you're trying to catch it immediately, right? look at that. Look at that overall production number. Is it going to be north of 16 or south? Right. What's that number going to come in? Then let's look at the yield, and then we'll start diving into acres. One number that hasn't changed at all, and I have no reason to think it will this year, is feed and residual. Right. That number continues to remain strong, where we know we're not feeding out a lot of cattle in the United States. And so that one, I think, is always it always gets brought up as a head scratcher, right? I guess I should keep in mind that it is residual too. Keep that in that's part of the equation. But it's one of those that every time going back in February and March, I saw analysts saying, okay, that feed number is going to drop. It hasn't dropped, Brady.
Right. It's kind of USDA's dumping ground to make everything right and add up, it feels like. So I'm glad you brought that up though, because we talk about we're feeding less cattle, but we're taking them bigger too though, Connor. So the number of days on feed, they're getting bigger. We're pumping more product to them because we may be feeding less, but we're feeding them longer, and they're consuming a lot of what are they? I don't know what the numbers will escape me, but dry matter intake as a percentage of body mass and what they consume. As a bigger animal, you eat more, you consume more as a bigger person. I don't know. My kids, they eat a ton. They clean out the pantry. So I shouldn't judge anything on the size of a person and what they can consume. But I would like to think that a 1,400-pound fat steer consumes more than an 800-900-pound fat steer, especially when you talk about finishing them and grain consumption. But that feed and residual number, yeah, some tweaks there on that. Exports, looking for a bump ups there potentially. And will the USDA kick the can and wait for September grain stocks, that quarterly grain stocks, to true up some of those things from old crop and that balance sheet going forward? It's a report. They're going to be numbers. You and I know this as well as anybody, that they're going to throw them out there. It's going to be highly debated. They're going to be wrong. They're going to change in the next report too, going forward.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to keep in mind, we look at the average analysts, right? The people that get paid a lot of money to do this for a living. There's a very good chance we're going to be outside of that range, meaning that every analyst, every yield model that they put out there, they were not even close to what the USDA printed. Not saying, maybe we hit the nail on the head this year. I don't know. Last year we did not. And I think that's important to keep in mind on, your individual operation. Don't base, any type of marketing decision on, okay, I think it's going to be a bullish report or a bearish report, right? Look, if you're trying to do something today, tomorrow, right before the report, it might be a little late. We probably should have had that decision a couple of weeks ago, but still, let's focus on the risk on your operation is where the marketing decisions should start. Not on, I don't think the crop's out there, let's buy calls, right?
Right. Yeah. I love that advice, Connor B. If you're dialed in on one thing for a producer to be thinking about right now, going forward, today, tomorrow, you got one piece of advice to give them, Connor. What's that advice? What's the go-to?
It's got to be easy answer for me. It's got to be, what are we doing with the fall bushels, and what are we doing with stuff that we have to turn grain into cash, right? If we have to cash flow stuff this fall, that is the priority, right? We can be bullish long term, but if the market dips here and we've got to sell, it puts us in a tough position. And so that's the number one thing. If we know bushels that are going in the bin, I'm okay staying a little patient, but we got to make a decision on stuff that's moving this fall.
That's a good point, especially if you're in your part of the world that's looking probably at really good production or good production overage bushels. Great stuff, Connor. What's your plan for those overage bushels and the cash flow going into the end of the year? Good stuff. Cool. All right. With that, let's jump out of here. Connor, thanks for joining me. Connor Bridgman, agmarket.net. We'll roll out. Hit us up. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Brady.